Here.
Embry.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Do we have any announcements to make?
No.
No announcements. Okay, we've got a full house with the planning commission. Do we have previous meeting minutes in here?
March 13th.
March 13th. Okay. Has everybody had a chance to review those?
Yes.
Yeah.
Any errors or omissions to note?
It looked great, good to me. Or is that yeah.
Okay.
It was so long since I've been, I don't remember, so.
That's
Oh, we didn't have last month.
We didn't have one last month, right?
You were present.
Yeah, I've got this. It seemed like new information.
Any story?
Anybody care to move to approve these minutes?
So moved.
A second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion on the minutes? Okay, please call the roll.
Whitmire.
Aye.
Moreland. Aye. Sherman.
Aye.
Embry.
Aye.
Motion passed.
All right. Okay, looks like we got a full slate here. We've got several public hearings, and I've got my some other business to attend to, and I've got my script for a planning commission quasi-judicial public hearing. I'll read this once because it's really, really boring, and it'll apply to all of our public hearings tonight. All right, the following statement will apply to all public hearings heard at tonight's meeting. The testimony and evidence must be directed toward the code section citations and criteria described by the Depoe Bay staff report or other criteria in the code the party believes to apply to the subject request. The failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the State Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. Application materials and other evidence relied upon by the applicant have been provided to the city and have been made available to the public. The procedures for the public hearings will be as follows. A, there will be a staff report. B, the applicant will present testimony. C, there will be testimony from those in favor of the application. D, there will be testimony from those in opposition to the application. E, there will be rebuttal from the applicant. F, I will then ask if there is anyone who requests that the record remain open for final additional written testimony. G, if none, the public hearing will be closed. And H, the commission will deliberate and make a decision. There will be no further input from the public during commission deliberations. Looks like our first public hearing case file is number 23R4 PC 24, applicant Kingsley Wick. Are there any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, or bias of commissioners regarding the hearing before us? Is there any opposition to any member on the commission hearing this case by commissioners or the public? Anybody on Zoom? Hearing none, I think we can get on with the staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. The applicant, so the first public hearing before you this evening is a request for a building permit that includes a retaining wall exceeding 8 feet in height for a new duplex townhouse development on Southeast Barrett Street, pursuant to section 152.061 sub E3 of the Depoe Bay zoning ordinance. A former residence that was on this property was damaged or otherwise fell into disrepair many years ago. The residence was demolished. The foundation remained in place until recently, when much of it was removed earlier this year by the applicant. Notice of the public hearing was mailed to property owners within a 250-foot radius of the subject property and was published in the Lincoln County Leader on May 22nd, 2024. On May 29th, 2024, staff was contacted at City Hall, Public County rather, by two property owners who had received the mail hearing notice and they had wished to review the project plans. On June 4th, the city received written testimony in opposition to the proposal from another property owner who had received mail hearing notice. I'll get into that as we get into the staff report. The applicant proposes, again, to construct a duplex townhouse development on the site. The application was filed initially as a simple building permit, but in the course of reviewing the scope of the proposal to determine that planning commission was required because the retaining wall associated with the building foundation exceeds 8 feet in height. As I mentioned, written public testimony opposing the application was received from Anel Ariola, who owns the abutting residence at 335 Southeast Garrett Street. Past responses to the issues raised by Ms. Ariola provided in tonight's report. I'll briefly go through those. Comment number 1 notes objections to the clearing of the lot that are related to the removal of the former building foundation. Staff understands that Ms. Ariola is concerned to be related to debris along the common side property line between the two lots. On June 4th, staff had asked the applicant to remove any debris along this property line, particularly any debris that might interfere with access to the westerly side yard of the adjoining property and their front entry door. And I believe the applicant is here this evening, and when he has an opportunity to address the commission, I believe he can discuss with you the issues related to that particular concern. Comment 2A expresses concern about access to Ms. Ariola's property and the adequacy of off-street parking for the project. The project provides 4 off-street parking spaces, which is the requirement for a duplex. Required improvements within the right-of-way of Southeast Garrett Street will be a 5-foot sidewalk, which is part of the townhouse development standard requirements, and improvement of 1/2 of the width of the right-of-way across the entire frontage, 50-foot wide frontage of the lot. Comment 2B expresses concern about electrical connections for the project, and the electrical service will need to be underground in accordance with the requirements of the townhouse development standards. Comment 2C expresses concern about dust and debris during construction. Standard condition of approval requiring drainage and erosion control plans will be imposed to address the issue of dust and debris from the site. And comment 2D expresses concern about the view impacts of the project. The city does not protect project views, and the proposed project complies with the R4 zone setbacks and the height. In the letter June 4th, Ms. Ariola had asked for the public hearing to be continued to July when she would be in town to possibly attend that meeting. But we understand that she is, I believe, online for the Zoom meeting this evening. We'll have the opportunity to testify in that manner this evening. As described in the staff report, the proposal is consistent with the R4 development standards that apply to the lot. Zoning code section 152.061E is the section that sets out standards for the reply to retaining walls, and then described in more detail in the staff report. The grade of the lot is not being raised to improve a view or to establish the permitted use. These are criteria that apply to retaining walls. The grade of the lot is actually being lowered in order to develop the proposed duplex. And the proposed, with respect to the height of the retaining wall exceeding 8 feet, the applicant has provided a narrative describing how the proposed retaining wall is consistent with the standards. The city's local wetland inventory map identifies a riparian corridor for a tributary of North Depoe Creek that encompasses, or appears to encompass, most of the property. In July 2023, when the property was for sale, the listing agent for the previous property owner contacted the Oregon Department of State Lands to initiate an off-site determination process to see if a formal wetland delineation was required to ensure that future development or redevelopment of this property could maintain an adequate setback from this tributary of North Depoe Creek. On August 22nd of 2023, the DSL issued a determination that did not appear that the development of the property would have any impact on jurisdictional wetlands or other points. And again, because this is a townhouse, 2 adjoining dwelling units, 2 stories with a common wall between them, the standards of section 152.136Q, which are the townhouse development standards, apply to the application. Townhouse developments that fully comply with these standards are allowed outright in the R4 zone, while townhouse developments that deviate from any of these standards are conditional, part of conditional use. As described in tonight's report, the proposed townhouse development in this case complies with the provisions of townhouse development standards and is outright. The duplex units will not be used for accommodations. and other applicable conditions related to townhouse development are recommended as part of the conditions of approval presented this evening. That concludes staff's presentation, and as I mentioned, the applicant is here, and there may be other members of the public who wish to address the commission on this application.
Okay. So we usually do questions for you from the
Yes,
commission.
and then before we get into
Testimony. Okay. Anybody got any questions for city planner on this application report?
Is the retaining wall part of the foundation?
yes,
It is the foundation.
yes, it's basically the foundation, so it's not like a situation where you're gonna have a not 8-foot plus retaining wall with a side yard that's gonna be visible. It's within the footprint of the building.
Towards the front of that, right?
Towards the back,
Towards the back.
Yeah, it's close up.
it's close up to the yard.
Back, left.
Any other questions for Kit on the staff report?
Do we have his number so we can dial his phone maybe?
No,
I'm sorry, if you're on Zoom, could you mute your mic and we will get to testimony on both sides here shortly.
certainly.
Okay, if there are no further questions for the city planner, what's up next is testimony in favor of the application. The applicant's welcome to come up and or speak to their application.
I'll do that.
Okay,
I assume I'm supposed to do that here.
please, and please sign in if you would.
Okay. Okay, so I'm the applicant, Kane Wick. The idea here was to meet all the criteria for a duplex townhouse, a two-family house for myself and my family to live in initially. And when we started designing it, I had the engineer come along. It was pretty obvious that an 11-foot foundation in the back on the tallest part would be appropriate, and that way I wouldn't have to have tall retaining walls behind that and go low. So by making the foundation taller, then I only have to have pretty short retaining walls that taper from 1 to 3 foot on the sides to keep the character of the property the way it is and look similar to what it already is. Otherwise, we had to have actual visible retaining walls that were considerably higher. So I decided that it would be better to ask the commission for a variance, or whatever the right word is, to do this, because it'll look better. It's better for the neighborhood. So otherwise, as far as I understand it, everything in the design meets the requirements. And then to address the neighbors' concerns about the impact, as he was for about the mess between the properties. When I had the excavator come in and start clearing, but then we ran into 2 issues. One was, as we were clearing, we found that the neighbor that's making the complaint, her water line goes straight across our property, and our water line is teed off of, her water line is teed off of ours. So I stopped in and talked to Public Works today, and their plan is to get rid of that. It's on the city side that's messed up. And so they're gonna fix it, and so that she has her own private water going forward. But we had to stop doing the excavation because I was concerned she didn't have no water if he dug any further. So it was pretty obvious. I just had to stop. Now, he never did any of the excavation within about 3 foot of her property line, so we haven't, in the area that she's talking about up front, where she enters her house, so, we tried not to impact the neighbor while we were doing the excavation. So the second, thing is, that will eventually impact her is the PUD has asked us to put, power underground. And that will affect her because, they've also asked her to, as I understand, to, repair her power going in because it doesn't currently meet code. I think they black tagged it. So I need to go to PUD and ask them to do a design for a trench, and then we'll dig the trench. And then I'll need to work with the neighbor about how she's gonna trench the rest of the way in her place to do the underground. So there's a negotiation that'll have to happen for her to get power again when she comes up with a plan. So, yeah, there were 2 reasons we stopped the excavation. One was her water, and the second was basically for her power, we get a plan in place for that. Yeah, beyond that, I hope this is fairly straightforward. I'm trying to follow all the rules, so sure. If not, then, I'll modify the plan, so.
All right. Are there any questions from the commission to the applicant?
I have a couple of questions here. One, it looked like the drainage of the rear yard goes towards the structure. Maybe you must have plans for diverting it around or catching it.
Yes, exactly, right, yeah. It'll have a drainage block all around it and foundation drains and that's what the engineer suggested, so.
And I don't know, I didn't see the size of the footing for that top wall.
It's in the engineer's information, and I think it's on the drawings too, but yeah, it's about 6 feet.
6 feet.
Pretty close, I think
And
6 inches less.
And the wall is 9 feet from the property line.
Well, so it's 20 inches outside the stem wall, and the rest is inside the stem wall. So
Right.
the widest part is inside.
So 4 feet of it.
Yes,
Almost
exactly.
4 feet,
Yeah,
3.5 or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
3.5 feet of it is on the inside, so the footing is less than 6 feet, 5.5 feet from the property.
That would be 7 feet from the property line, because the footing's 2 feet wide.
Footing goes back only 2 feet?
Yeah.
I thought you said the footing was 6 feet by total.
It is, but on the property, so you got 9 feet from the property line to stem wall, right?
Right.
And then the footing sticks out 2 feet there.
To the
So
exterior?
that leaves you 7 feet
The
from.
footing sticks out, the heel of the footings, it was only 2 feet.
Yes, exactly.
So that's 7 feet
Yeah.
from, okay.
Yeah.
But then you have room, you're gonna be digging probably 6 feet or so away. And do you know how the vertical cut? How much vertical cut from the existing ground?
It'll vary,
It seems like it's gonna be about 12 feet or something.
it'll vary from front to back, it'll vary from about one foot in front to, well, it's gonna be 11-foot tall foundation, 11-foot tall from the bottom of the footing to the top of the stem wall, so yeah, the cut will be 10 foot. So leave the 8 inches, that would be.
Only 10 feet?
Yeah, and then there will be there's a 3 foot up from 1 to 3 foot retaining wall.
I think the cut to the garage grade is 10 foot. Or the basement grade,
Yeah,
not necessarily, for the total, to get the footing in and all that, you're gonna be a couple of feet deeper, wouldn't you?
Are you asking how far we're gonna have to excavate out the back?
From
then?
original ground all the way down to
Yeah,
the
that's
bottom
good.
footing.
From the original ground, yes. So it's about 13 feet. Yep. That's why the retaining wall, the visible retaining wall is 1 to 3 feet, so that, because of that 2 feet that you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant from the commissioners?
Is this ground level at foundation after grading, is that similar, gonna be similar to what the slope of the lot is now?
I hear it's kind of poor, I'm sorry.
So there's the ground level at the foundation after grading.
Yeah.
Is that similar to what the slope is now, or is that different?
The slope of the lot in the end will not really change. That's the whole idea, that's why we did the retaining walls the way we did. It basically stays the same. We lowered the front of the house, of the foundation of the slab, so that when we're coming in from Derrick Street, it used to be extremely steep. And now we're down to 7% grade in the driveway, which is a reasonable grade in the driveway.
So it was steeper.
It was considerably steeper, yeah. It was essentially a whole driveway.
Any questions for the applicant? I've just got one quick question and one quick comment. My question is, from the sounds of it and based on the staff report and the application, it sounds like, following all the townhouse development rules that you mentioned, the only reason that you're in front of us is because of the retaining wall, because it's, outside the normal scope of, the size or height or whatever. Is that, you agree?
That's
with
correct,
that?
yes.
Okay.
Everything else, if I understand from Kit's analysis, that I've met all the other rules. So I've worked with him, giving him various designs for the last few months until I hope I nailed it, so.
Yeah, it's always an ongoing thing. Okay, that was my only question. And my only my comment is regarding the neighbors' concerns. I presume it sounds like you're working with the neighbor to get everything resolved and move ahead. And
That is not my intent. I've had one conversation with the neighbor about when we started tree cutting, but I haven't had a conversation with the neighbor since the complaint here. But we're gonna need to because of water and power. We have to, so.
Okay. All right.
We are here, the neighbor.
Okay. That was we'll get to the rest of the testimony here momentarily.
Very good. Thank you. I'll shut it off.
It's okay. Do you have anything else?
No, I hope that's it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now next will be testimony from those in favor of the application. If anybody here or on Zoom is present in favor of the application and wishes to testify. Going once, going twice. Okay, hearing none. Next up is testimony from those in opposition to the application. And I believe we've got a couple. How do we decide who goes first, rock, paper, scissors, or?
Is for in the room or on the Zoom or?
We've got at least one in the room and at least one on Zoom.
It's the president's pledge, we don't have a protocol, so.
Okay. All right, those of you on Zoom, would you care to introduce yourselves if you wish to testify in opposition to the application?
Go ahead.
Yes, my name is Anel Arriola, and I have here my partner who will speak for me. I need to mention this. I have chemotherapy today, and I'm not going to be myself until 3 days, and he would be the spokesman for me.
Introduce me. Who I am.
Yes, I'm catching my breath. His name is John O'Brien.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, John.
Oh, okay. My great concern is the setbacks. There seems to be some controversy in the writings relative to either a 9-foot setback or a 30-foot setback. If it's 9 feet, that's going to be 9 feet from our front porch. That's close. And I thought setbacks were at least 20 feet. And because of the uphill nature of the plots that we're speaking of, it'd be even closer. We'd be staring at a 20 feet building right in front, 9 feet in front of our front door. That is of concern. Is it 9 feet or is it 30 feet?
There's a couple of them. I'm going to refer you to the city planner. He's got the setback numbers in his head a little bit better, but it does appear to me, according to the application, that they are in compliance. You're going to address the setback.
The side setback that's being proposed is 9 feet on both sides. I'm sorry, 9 feet on both sides.
Okay, so
Well, if there's 9 feet in the backside, why is there a 20-foot setback in the front side? Why not make it more central than the building is placed on the plot map right now? I mean, that's close. 9 feet is very close. By the way, I don't object to the building and the permit and the application.
We don't.
I think that we need to move forward in that community. I'm glad that the applicant is building there. There was a burn house there for years and years. He took that out and took out the superstructure from it. But when we went up there a month ago, there was just a mess. And I realized that happens when cutting down trees. But hopefully that's fixed soon. I mean, it was disappointing to go to the property, and we have our own issues there. As I described in a memo that I sent to Mr. Fox, Ms. Ariola went through a long-term divorce and only now got title to the property. So we haven't spent a lot of time there over the past few years, but our intent moving forward is to spend more time there. It's a beautiful little cabin, and building is fine, okay? We don't object to that. Then the second objection that I have is that our ingress and egress to the property right now is a dirt road that gets wet, and it's hard to get out of. It's difficult to manage. If he's building this structure, why can't he continue to build a cement piece where we park at the bottom of the hill? We will pay for it. With the electricity issue, his bulldozer must have hit our wire line because the wood is skewed. It's off center. And the PUD guy mentioned that to me. And we said, we'll find a way to do something with it. Now we're talking about going underground. And we can deal with the neighbor, the applicant, on that basis moving forward. That's not a problem. Okay. The view is disappointing, but we understand the view issue cannot be determined. Okay. Those were my 4 issues in the memorandum we had sent.
all right, does that conclude your testimony?
The other issue is the riparian rights. The creek is a lot closer than what is being portended. It will involve the creek in doing this building one way or another. I don't know if riparian rights are going to be affected, but it's close. It's right off the road at Derrick Street. Derrick Street is not much of a street. It's just a dirt road. And something needs to be looked at there. I realize you guys did a study of that relative to the application and said there would be no problems. I don't believe that. I think there will be repairing issues.
Let me see something.
That's all I really have to say.
I have something to say. I like to hear the gentleman that was speaking. I like that he mentioned about neighbors getting together and talk about not necessarily issues, but talk about water and other things. And I see the I see the drawings, even though they're drawing and it's measurement in the front, measurement in the front, in the back. Being that I'm going to be coming in every month, and I wish that we can meet and I can see it physically and discuss. Not just me, but I was hoping that there were other neighbors too that were, as he said, were able to discuss it. The drawing is I got to see it physically. I guess if this is my part, paying a survey, where is my property line? Because we have two parcels. I would like to know where it begins and where does it end. Thus, I know it's my part. But I also, the same thing is what they're going to build. I need to physically be able to see it as they describe it on the drawings. I know I'm repeating myself again. I'm done.
Okay, thank you for your comments. The applicant in a moment will have an opportunity to respond to you. Is there any other testimony in opposition to the application? Please come forward.
Taylor Shepherd, 40 Southeast Davenport, Miami, neighbor to the west. My opposition isn't necessarily, with the building, it's with the infrastructure around. Davenport Avenue going into Harris Street is in very bad repair. And at this time, my concern is, with the amount of traffic that will increase going through there and down around that corner, which is a fairly steep corner, that we're going to see further deterioration of the road. Additionally, I'm concerned that the area on the south side of my house where it meets Derrick Street, since King and Keller are going to have to be putting in a stub of sidewalk there in front of their place, am I going to be required to put sidewalk continue all around the corner as I live on the corner? There will be impact to my property because the power line comes to the power pole there, and I imagine the power pole, that's where they're going to bring it down, is that the power pole?
That's my understanding.
Yeah, and so, my concern is what kind of, responsibility am I going to have where that power is going in? Is there going to be impact to my property? And then, I guess I won't say last, not least, I might talk for a while, but where with the city water, when town is very busy, you lose water pressure where we're at, because we're trying to figure out stuff that's right at that end of it, right? We see, a loss of water pressure, we see rust in our water there, and so I have some concern about if King and Kelly are going to be putting a renter in there that's going to be full-time, or however that works out, if we're going to be seeing some infrastructure improvements, that's going to affect the whole street. I understand that they have met with Mr. Fox and they're within their rights to put a duplex on property. Not real keen on that, but that's within their rights. But I am concerned about the maintenance of the road. There last summer, I'm speaking for my neighbor on the other side of the road now, on the other side of Derrick Street. I believe that she did pay for some of the improvements, put crushed gravel in there on Derrick Street. And there's already been a fair amount of loss of that crushed gravel from the construction, where it's been pushed down over the edge and into the forested area. So I have some concern about that. Yeah, I guess that sums it up, that's my list of concerns.
Okay. Thank you. If you wouldn't mind, yeah, please send me. Okay. Is there any other testimony in opposition to the application, either on Zoom or present here in the room? Okay.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah, sure, go ahead.
I forgot to add this when I talked first. This is not about the construction, but I always wonder why we didn't have Derrick Street. There's a sign in front of it. I thought somebody put it there so that they know that's the street that we lived in. There's no city sign, Derrick Street. Maybe the city put it there, that one sign that I think someone made it so that it's easier for looking for the address.
Okay, I think that's a bit outside of the scope of this particular case or hearing tonight.
Okay.
But I think there's city staff present that might make a note that there's lack of signage. Okay, any other testimony in opposition to the application? Okay, the applicant is welcome to come up and offer any rebuttal.
Please, thank you. I'm not sure I got everything that Anel and your representative were talking about, but I want to assure Anel that your view actually is going to be really well maintained because of the setbacks. We have, from the street, we have 20, I don't know where she's looking here. So, yeah, we have, our setback from the street is 20 foot. Anel's setback, because the house was built a long time ago, was roughly 11 foot. And so her view out to the ocean and the bridge is really well maintained with that nine foot of difference. So if she goes and stands on the front porch, right now there's a very big stump that we're trying to get out, the one we stopped, is the water line. But the stump, the north end of the stump is where the corner of the house is gonna be. And if she were there, she would see that that is not gonna impact her view at all. So I think she'll be really happy with that. And because the setback in the front is 20 foot, the 9 foot on the side really puts this new house pretty far away from hers. I think she'll find this a fairly good setup for her, so. And then to address Taylor's concern, well, thank you, by the way, for explaining the water situation. I just came into the, today and talked to the public works director, and he was actually aware of that, and he's planning on examining the water line, he's talking about that today, and putting in a bigger water line in the process here. I don't know where that will start and stop. All those details need to be worked out, but that's a really good input. So thank you. And I'll work that out with public works. And then the road, we'll work it out. I have a tractor and a dump trailer. It's really easy for me to move gravel. So when the road goes bad, I can help out, and we can do the neighborly thing. So I've done that. It's really easy for me to do that. So yeah, we'll work that out.
Okay.
I think that's what I have. So.
Okay. Okay, we've received testimony in favor and in opposition, and we've gone through rebuttal from the applicant. Is there any final call on testimony? Okay. Is there anyone who requests that the record remain open for final additional written testimony?
Yeah, it's gonna sound stupid, but I feel stupid as I should in a way, because being close to, I hear the gentleman and I feel positive about that. And I don't want to feel negative, but this is how I feel. I am, I feel confident that that is not going to be too close to our front door, because it's going to be, another is that it's going to be looked at through the city. But what about if it's not? What is the setback that we discussed, that we read?
Uh, I thought it was gonna be 30 feet, but 30 feet's not possible,
It is going to be
9 feet.
9 feet at all, but nothing more than that. Is that clear? Is that clear?
That's what the application says.
Okay. Okay. Okay, no more questions.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask again if if there's anyone who requests the record remain open for final additional written testimony. All right, hearing none. The public hearing is now closed, and we go to commission deliberations. Any deliberations?
So Taylor Shipper brought up the issue of the sidewalk. The new building is gonna be required to put in a sidewalk. That doesn't affect existing neighbors.
Yeah, I don't feel like the neighbors would have to build sidewalks just because somebody's building a new house. I don't think that would be weird.
It's been done before, but it's called the local improvement district.
Okay.
And that's something the city would have to do separately from this
Yeah.
application.
And just to clarify, so the sidewalk requirement is being driven by the fact that this is a townhouse development. And it's new construction.
Okay.
What's the slope of that sidewalk gonna be?
What's the slope gonna be?
Yeah. Is it gonna be?
I don't know the answer to that, it's not much, so.
Okay.
It really asking, this is the slope of Derrick Street, I don't know the answer to that.
I'm only concerned because the sidewalk might be more slippery than gravel or not paved.
I would say that in one of the other counties I lived in, they had.
Let's keep it to deliberations only among discussion.
Okay.
Please, thank you.
My main concern or suggestion, a lot of cities would make this conditional for tall retaining wall with a big cut. That engineer evaluate whether shoring would be required to make that cut.
I was kind of wondering that. That's a big vertical cut, and I believe I've seen that a lot, that shoring some sort in place for something like that, even on temporary excavation. Is there any, I guess, there wasn't anything in the application about any temporary shoring?
No, I think that would be really at the point where there's an actual building permit that's being reviewed by Lincoln County as our building official, then they would be the ones to make the call or whether shoring or anything related to structural, the actual structure of the building that the commission is, that's not before the commission.
Okay. Any other deliberation, these commissioners?
Well, it sounds like this request meets the requirements for the exception of the 8-foot retaining wall, the way I study it.
Anybody care to move anything?
Move adoption.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
The motion has been made and seconded to approve the application as with the conditions that in the application. Is there any further discussion? Charlie, please call the roll.
Moreland,
Aye.
Sherman.
Aye.
Embry,
Aye.
Whitmire.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Okay, thank you. That will conclude this hearing. And we will move on with the next hearing, which is Case file number 1-CU-PC-24, applicant Paul Carver. And I believe there is also a staff report for this one.
Yes, there is, thank you.
Oh, hold on, that'll be, we got any, oh,
Yeah, we should.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Pardon, yes, exactly.
are there any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, or bias of commissioners regarding the hearing before us? Ruth?
I just wanted to make a disclosure that from looking into application, there's Paul Carver, but then it also seems like there's Jessica Carver. And she was previously my manager, so I still have a working relationship with her. She has some authority over me, so I just wanted to disclose that. I feel like we can still make a decision.
Okay. So you're gonna hang on?
I'm gonna hang on, just unless somebody kicks me off, but I just wanted to make that part of the record.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anybody else? Okay. Please.
Thank you.
If you could ask if there's any objection.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Thank
This is, I skipped the script the second time here. Any opposition to any member on the commission hearing this case by other commissioners or the public? Okay.
So in this case, the applicant was requesting a conditional use permit for the use of a recreational vehicle as a dwelling unit on an undeveloped lot in Southeast Craig Place, pursuant to section 152.027B15 and 152.136M of the Depoe Bay zoning ordinance. At some point in the past, there was apparently a trailer or a small mobile home on this lot, which still has utility connections in place. The trailer or mobile home was apparently removed from the property sometime in 2018 or earlier, based upon the county aerial photo data that we were able to look at. Notice of this public hearing was mailed to property owners within a 250-foot radius of the subject property and was published in the Lincoln County Leader on May 22nd, 2024. No written testimony was received at the time this report was completed. So again, in this case, the applicant is proposing to construct a 20-foot by 50-foot pad on which an RV can be parked, located such that any slide-out components of an RV would not encroach beyond the minimum property line setbacks. The pad will be adjacent to and/or incorporate existing utility connections to provide water, sewer, and other connections to the RV. Additional off-street parking spaces will be provided to accommodate 2 vehicles. And there's an existing shed near the right rear corner of the lot, base of the lot, that will be removed. So in most cases, in most neighborhoods in the city, city's code allows RVs to be occupied as dwelling units only on a temporary basis on undeveloped lots, and only in conjunction with the approval of a building permit for a permanent residence or manufactured home. So basically, if a property owner has a building permit to construct a house or place a mobile home on a lot, during the time that construction or placement is happening, they can occupy the property temporarily in an RV, and once the construction is completed, then they can stop using the RV as well. However, in the R3 zone, an RV may be occupied as a dwelling unit on an undeveloped lot as a conditional use. As described in the staff report, this proposal is consistent with the R3 development standards, setbacks, and parking requirements, particularly provided that a CUP is issued. Section 152.136M of the zoning ordinance sets out the conditional use standards that apply and performance criteria that apply specifically to the use of an RV as a dwelling unit on an undeveloped lot. Let's go through those quickly. One is that the approval of such use will not encourage a pattern of development that is incompatible with surrounding area development. The surrounding area is one of 3 R3 districts in the city. The pattern of development in this neighborhood consists of similar small lots and minimally improved public and private streets. Developed lots are improved with a mixture of conventional and manufactured homes, and there are also a few older travel trailers on some individual lots. Therefore, the use of an RV as a dwelling unit appears to be generally compatible with a variety of development that is occurring or has occurred within the surrounding area. Second is that the placement must be approved by the city and must be connected to the city approved sewer and water system. So there are, as I mentioned, existing connections on the property to the city's water and sewer systems, and the applicant will be required to connect to those and obtain whatever permits and permissions are necessary to make those connections to an RV that's placed on the property. Third finding is that site obscuring screening shall be required to a height as approved by the planning commission and shall be accomplished with vegetation or fencing landscaped with vegetation to minimize impacts on adjacent properties. So the property is surrounded by existing trees and vegetation that serves to substantially screen an RV view. There's a photograph from the street in the staff report that shows what it looks like or looked like right in the photo a month or so ago. The front property line needs to be kept generally open to allow RVs to move on and off the lot and to provide access to the off-street parking spaces that will be required for the tenant of the property. So unless the commission believes otherwise, staff believes that additional visual screening is not necessary in this case. And the final finding is that upon compliance with the above and additional conditions that the planning commission feels necessary to ensure compatibility with surrounding area development, a conditional use permit shall be given in accordance with the standards of the zoning ordinance. As described in the staff report this evening, staff suggests imposing several conditions of approval to address potential issues with this use, and those include prohibiting any transient or short-term occupancy. So the minimum tenancy would be 30 days for an RV or any kind of RV trailer or motorized to be placed on the property. Second condition is that any RVs placed on the property must be registered and operable if they are motorized. Third requirement is that the street address will be posted. So some type of a post, some type of a small sign basically that will identify the street address, and that will assist emergency response and also assist the city, frankly, in meter reading and other services where it's probably necessary to find property, which one might not otherwise have an address posted. Containers for trash and recycling shall be provided, and they shall be located in an area screened from view, and there should be arrangements made for those to be picked up, whether there's service, traditional residential service provided to the site, or whether the applicant hauls the waste off site and disposes of it on its own. But one way or the other, the trash will be disposed of on a weekly basis. And then the third condition is recommended is related to slide outs, which I mentioned earlier. Many RVs, as you know, have these slide out units, and we just want to be sure that any of those slide outs are encroaching into a required setback. We think based on the location of the pad and its distance from the side property lines, that shouldn't be an issue. But just want to clarify that there should not be any interference within the slide out units with either setback areas or with any of the required off-street parking. That concludes staff's presentation of the applicant's presentation.
Good, thank you. Are there any questions for Kit regarding the the staff report?
So you made the comment that you thought that this use of this property would be generally compatible with the other uses in that neighborhood? That there's a mixture of different types of residential structures?
Yes, I mean, it seems like there is a mix, there seems to be a mixture of different types of structures, manufactured homes, stick-built homes, other similar trailer-y things on lots, and there's certainly, there used to be some type of a trailer or a small, like a single wide or something on this lot at one point, and there seem to be other similar dwellings in the neighborhood on some of the other lots that are in the R3 zone, so it seemed like given the mixture of different types of structures that improvements that allowing RVs to be used in this case was not incompatible with the variety that's already present in the neighborhood.
So then I have one other I don't know if it's technical question, that the conditional uses permitted include RVs on individual lots in this zone. But is the application for don't know how to say this, so an RV could be coming in and out of this property, which make it maybe an RV pad versus an actual RV there consistently. Do you think that makes any difference for the conditional use?
Well, I mean, it's still a conditional use permit. The standards that allow the occupancy of an RV as a dwelling unit don't speak to the issue of how long it needs to be there as a minimum. The code, as the commission is aware, the city doesn't allow short-term rentals or short-term occupancy of any kind of dwelling units in residential zone. So that, which is why there's a condition that talks about that being prohibited and why there's a minimum 30-day term. And I believe in speaking, all of the applicant speaking of this opportunity to do so, but I believe it's the applicant's intent or hope that to have tenants coming onto the property who would perhaps be occupying the premises for longer periods of time, traveling nurses, that type of thing, where they might need to stay for 3 or 4 months or longer. So that there would not be frequent turnover with the RV coming in and out like every month, but there's nothing in the code, as long as it meets the definition of long-term rental, then whether it's one RV that stays on the lot all the time, and there are just different tenants moving in and out of it every month, or whether it's a different RV that comes in on the 1st and goes out on the 31st, and another one comes in on the 1st and goes out on the 31st.
That's
It's
still meets
basically
the
the same.
requirements of.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Kit on the staff report from commissioners? Okay, applicants welcome to come up and present testimony.
Okay, my name is Paul Carver. I'm here for 20 Southeast Grade. So basically, I don't have a whole lot to say, except it's not like it's gonna be an Airbnb or anything like that, where we have people coming in like every day or anything like that. This is something that we talked about with my wife and myself, that it's a need that there are people that need to have a place to come to, because it's hard to find stuff when they come here to work. So we figured at least 30-day minimum. Reason we say 30 days is because if somebody was to leave, you know, we're not gonna move somebody in right away. We're still gonna have that 30 days, but if they were gone, you know, it kind of covers that. I don't know if you guys have any questions.
So now the plan is to have one RV.
Just one, yeah, that would be it. I live close by there, I don't wanna have to deal with a bunch of stuff going crazy around there, so that is where I'm at with it. So it's gonna be pretty well good to go as far as being taken care of.
Very good. Any questions from commissioners to the applicant? No? All right. Thank you.
How did you sign?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any testimony from those on Zoom or in the audience here in favor of the application?
I have something to say on that point. Taylor Shepherd,
I do need you to come
Okay,
forward,
yeah.
please, thank you.
All right, come on. You don't need to sign in again.
I'm Taylor Shepherd still. So just as, you know, as part of what you're saying about there's not a whole lot of long-term rental for RVs, people moving into the area. When we relocated to the area in 2022, I came here to work at, you know, the Toledo Mill, and we ended up living down there at the Port of Newport RV park for 90 days, and it was immensely expensive. So I think that that is absolutely a great idea on their part to, you know, start providing this for, you know, transient workers, you know, people, traveling nurses, or, you know, people coming to the area and trying to find a place to land.
Great, thank you for your comments. Is there any other testimony in favor of the application? Anybody on Zoom wish to testify in favor? Okay, hearing none, is there anybody present that wishes to speak in opposition to the application? Anybody on Zoom wish to speak in opposition to the application? Hearing none, there's no rebuttal to be had. Is there anyone that requests that their record remain open for final additional written testimony? Hearing none, that will conclude the public hearing and we will begin commission deliberations. Anybody have anything to deliberate? I will say in addressing Ruth's, no, it wasn't. I do agree with the testimony in favor. Not just with traveling nurses as an example. There's a lot of traveling working people out there. I've been working in construction for over 20 years, and there are a lot of people that go in not long term, not short term, but semi long term rental needs. Like you go to an area for a few months and need a place to stay, whether you're building a new building for a while or starting up in a new waiting to get your new place or whatever. I think it's having a RV sites is really a boon for a lot of people that are in those situations. So I do agree with that. Anybody have anything else to comment on? Okay, anybody care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve this application with the conditions that are stated in the document.
Motions have been made and seconded and thirded, apparently. Any further discussion amongst commissioners? Carla, would you please call the roll?
Sherman?
Aye.
Hambrick?
Aye.
Whitmire?
Aye.
Moreland?
Aye.
Motion passed.
Okay. Thank you. Good to go.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. We have an additional public hearing, which is case file number 1-GO-PC-24. Applicant is Jeremy Cogdill and O'Brien Design and Build, Open Concept Architecture. Are there any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, or bias of commissioners regarding this hearing?
Okay, I have attended both the open house and the meeting where they came to present the little on both board.
Okay.
One evidence.
Okay. No, Ruth? I'll be quick. I don't really have much, but I do live in Little Whale Cove. Other than that, I don't have any prior knowledge or any insight into what's going on over here, other than what I've been presented in the application materials. So that's my ex parte contact, and similarly, I don't believe it will have any impact on my decision. Is there any opposition to any member of the commission hearing this case by commissioners or the public? Hearing none. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the third public hearing before you this evening is a request, technically it's a request for a geotechnical report review, but there's probably start from reading the staff report, it's more to it than just geotechnical issues, but that's the basic reason why the planning commission is reviewing this application this evening. So the proposal is for a 12-unit multifamily affordable townhouse development on South Highway 101. The project site is Tract D in Phase 1 of Little Whale Cove Plan Development. The project proposes two-story buildings with 6 units per building. The unit mix consists of 11 two-story, 2-bed, 1.5-bath units and one 1-story, 2-bedroom, 1-bath handicap accessible unit. Site improvements will include off-street resident parking for 24 vehicles, landscaping and recreational amenities such as a community garden, walking paths, playground, and picnic areas. The intended residents are to be primarily families, with the units providing significant rental subsidies to qualifying residents with very low income. Point out that the owner of the property is the housing authority of Lincoln County, which has other affordable projects existing that they manage and operate throughout the county. The project requires geotechnical report review because the comprehensive plan identifies high groundwater as a geologic hazard on this site. Notice of the public hearing was mailed to property owners within a 250-foot radius of the subject property and was published in the Lincoln County Leader on May 22nd, 2024. No written testimony was received at the time that this report was completed. So again, with respect to the geotechnical issues of the geologic hazard report, the high groundwater is a geologic hazard that's identified as requiring planning commissioner approval of geologic hazard report. Geologic hazards assessment by NV5 was dated December 28, 2023, was submitted to the city on March 5th, 2024, and sent to the city engineer for review. The report underwent 2 rounds of review by the city engineer, and there was a supplemental slope assessment that was provided as part of that review process. That slope assessment was dated May 1st, 2024. And based on these reports and the city engineer's review, the reports were conceptually approved on May 16th. Subject to the conditions of approval that are described in commencement report. There's a copy of the letter from the city engineer who did that review, and his recommendations are included as recommended conditions of approval. So in addition to the base issue of geologic hazards, the project is required to comply with all other applicable provisions of the zoning ordinance. As described in the staff report, the project complies with the R4 zone development standards. The permitted use of tract D that was identified as part of the Little Whale Cove land development back in the 70s when it was originally approved is for a maximum of 12 units of rental housing. Off-street parking will include handicap accessible spaces and a space with EV charging infrastructure. The proposed parking spaces and drive aisles will comply with the dimensional requirements of the zoning ordinance. And to reduce the amount of impermeable surface on the site that assists with drainage, the applicant is proposing an alternative paving surface for the parking area and drive aisles. An open space lot in Little Whale Cove, known as Tract B, surrounds the subject property on 3 sides to the north, south, and west. The city's local wetlands inventory map identifies a wetland area on Tract B, with the riparian corridor for this wetland area encompassing the roughly the westerly half of Tract D. In January 2024, the applicants contacted the Department of State Lands to initiate an off-site determination process to see if a formal wetland delineation was required to ensure that future development of the property would maintain adequate setbacks from the wetland identified on Tract B. On February 16th, 2024, DSL issued a determination that it did not appear that the development of the property would impact any jurisdictional wetlands or other waters. The Depoe Bay Comprehensive Plan identifies a 40-foot wide forested corridor along South Highway 101, extending southward from southwest South Point Avenue to the city limit at Big Whale, if you will. Section 152.074B3 of the zoning ordinance establishes the standards for the forested corridor that are intended to preserve its aesthetic resource to the maximum extent practical. There are allowances for trees to be removed or trimmed within this corridor to provide clearances for structures within the corridor. It should also be noted that the applicant's plan was prepared to submit to the city prior to the recent trimming and removal of trees along the frontage of the property that was undertaken by Central Lincoln PUD to protect their overhead electrical lines. The Central Link's actions within their easement area are beyond the control of the applicant. So with respect to the remaining trees within the forested corridor, staff believes that the applicant's proposal is consistent with the provisions of section 152.074B3 of the zoning ordinance. And there is a landscape plan that inventories the trees that is part of the plan that are before you this evening, included in the staff report. With respect to townhouse development standards, this is another townhouse development application. I think this is the third one.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So it sets out again the standards and performance criteria that apply to townhouse developments. And when the townhouse development fully complies with these standards, it's an outright use. If it doesn't fully comply, it's a conditional use. So the project's compliance with the provisions of the townhouse development standards are described in tonight's report based upon the project plans and the applicant's supporting narrative. Staff believes that the proposed townhouse development qualifies as an outright use in the R4 zone, subject to the imposition of applicable conditions of approval that are again included within the recommendation before you this evening. And finally, there are just a few other additional issues that affect the property or affect the review that I just want to bring to the Commission's attention. And as Commissioner Whitmire alluded to, there were public open houses that the applicant hosted to share information about the project. One was held on April 2nd, I think, at the city's community hall, and I believe that they also made a presentation for residents who were about the homeowners association sometime later in April. The proposed project will connect to the city sewer system through an extension of a sewer line that was installed within Track B in anticipation of providing a future sewer connection to Track B. In response to concerns that were expressed by residents, at least at the open house that I attended, the applicant is providing a perimeter fence that will secure the Little Well Cove open space lots, recreational amenities, and beach access. And there was distributed to you this evening was a 11 by 17, so slightly updated or revised plans for the project, and the site plan as part of that plan set does show the location of the perimeter fence. The project plans have been routed to and reviewed by the city engineer, by ODOT, which has authority over the drive approach from South Highway 101, the fire district, and the North Lincoln Sanitary District, and again, we're applicable their comments to the agency comments concerns that included as conditions of approval. The project did not require a transportation impact study because it doesn't propose new subdivisions or planned development, which are the only circumstances or other types of development where a transportation impact study is potentially a requirement. And it should also note that there's no permanent signage that's currently being proposed for the project, but in the event that there is a proposal at some point in the future, such signage will be subject to the requirement for a city sign permit, so that would be compliant with the signage that's allowed in a residential R4 zone. That concludes staff presentation. We have members of the development team here in the room this evening, and I believe online as well.
Okay, are there any questions for Kit regarding the staff report?
Yeah, I have a question. Is ODOT sure about this? No left turn lane on 101, because that's right where it narrows between South Point and Little Well Cove turn.
They have ODOT approved the existing drive approach that's part of the site, and our understanding is that that's still approved, and that didn't include the requirement for any type of turn out there.
Okay, that was our main objection to the working was because just one left turner trying to get in there for Newport. Don't things look good.
Any other questions for Kit on the staff report?
So I think you state this, but I just wanted to make sure I interpret it correctly. There is no trees, currently there's no trees in the forested corridor that need to come down.
There are some of the trees that are remaining may need to come down. So, and the plan that's, it's a little hard to read because it's not, but the plan that was included in the staff report, oh, I'm sorry, there's another, not the one that's in the body of the staff report, but attached to the full staff report, there's a more detailed inventory that identifies trees by size, which ones, because the language in the code for the forested corridor talks about protecting trees that are over a certain size, they have to be more than 6 inches in diameter, 4 feet above the ground. So smaller trees in that aren't necessarily protected. So some trees are gonna need to come out because buildings or because of the location of the building in order to maintain separation between structures and foliage. There's some of those trees that are gonna be removed. But I believe the intent of the developer is to re-landscape that area where trees are removed and eventually, that over the course of time, that trees and foliage will grow back to help provide additional screening for the buildings that are used from, I don't know.
I have another question, for clarification. It says, prior to issuance of an occupancy permit, a final inspection report by NV5 shall be provided in case the project has been graded and foundation pavement support constructed in accordance with their recommendations. So it's talking about occupancy permit, but then it's just talking about this. Well, it talks about site development and foundation pavement support, but requiring that and getting it are two separate things. I've seen in the past some geotechnical engineers do the site development work, but then decline to do the building approvals. So I'm wondering if it's within our scope to say that to ask if NV5 is willing to do that.
So, am I understanding your questions or your statement to be? I want to understand that you mentioned looking at the buildings. So, are you?
Yes.
My understanding is this condition is not requiring the geotechnical engineer to review the buildings. It's to review the grade. Before the buildings are released for occupancy, they need to.
It's saying that NV5 is required to approve the foundation subgrade for the buildings. They're talking about that the fill is unsuitable and it needs to be either geopiers or rigid inclusions to support the buildings. But it's actually getting more and more common. There's fewer and fewer engineers that are allowed to do residential. The insurance companies are telling them they can't do residential. So I'm just wondering, is it within our scope to ask that, are they going to provide that? You're saying that you want that, but are they willing to provide it?
Is NV5 willing to provide it?
Yes.
I guess that's a question for NV5. This is, the condition that's.
It's
bottom of page 14.
it's
Right.
in your staff report.
Yeah.
It's item C2 on the top of page 18 and 20.
Okay. And it's also, I think, it's the same language. 14. Yeah, yes, you're correct. And the conditions, it's on page 18, item C2, and also in the body of the staff report, it's the same language, which is a recommendation, which is language coming from the city engineer.
Right.
That's at the bottom of page 14.
I just was wondering, can we ask confirmation that they can provide that?
You can ask. You can ask. I don't know. I don't know that there's any. You can ask. I don't know that there's anybody here this evening as part of the development team in the room or online who can answer that question. Okay, and I think ultimately I understand the commissioner's concern. And it's probably well placed to share that with the developer, just so that they know that that's a possibility, but I think that's their problem. If they have a consultant that they're on board who won't do what needs to be done to get these projects signed off, then that's their problem. Not this commission's problem.
All right.
So from the city's perspective, is there a relationship between this property and this project and Little Well Cove? Or are they separate?
Well, there's a relationship in that the property, this 2-acre lot is part of, was created as a part of the Little Well Cove plan development. It's part of the first phase that was subdivided back in the early 70s. And I didn't dig up the copy of it. I've seen the records from the CCNR to talk about the permitted uses of different tracts within the Well Cove, and this tract was intended originally to be developed. There were eventually 12 rental units that were intended to be occupied by the domestic help of residents who lived within the gates.
So it is part of Little Well Cove.
It is part of the plan development.
So as a side question I have a hard time understanding about this fence. It seems like the purpose of the fence is to keep the residents out of Little Well Cove. But I can ask the developer about that.
Yeah, that might be a question.
There's a history of that track. I don't think it's part of the local plan community anymore, is it? I think that track was removed at some point.
No, it's still, it's the legal description is track D of Little Well Cove number 1.
So that raises the question, are they going to become part of the homeowners association?
That's getting outside of staff report questions.
Well, it legally attached to the property. So it is a question, but
We can ask the developer at testimony time. Any other questions for this regarding the staff report for Kit? Okay. The applicant is present, I believe, somewhere on Zoom or?
On Zoom, yes.
Okay, there you go. Applicants, welcome to present testimony.
Thank you. And happy to clarify any of these, the points that were raised. So I wasn't sure if we were supposed to talk then or if we wanted to get to that later. We have met with the city engineer and the geologist working on the project in NB5, and we did discuss the next steps. So happy to get into that. But those comments were reviewed with the pertinent parties.
If I can interrupt you really quick, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
You bet. My name is Jeremy Cogdill with Open Concept Architecture. Like Kit mentioned, I'll just kind of do a quick project overview as well. I think Kit did a great job. We're requesting a geologic hazards review for a 12-unit multifamily affordable townhome development. So it's 6 and 6, totaling 12 units along South Highway 101. The property is 2 acres. We provided the required geotechnical and geohazard documents. Those should all be included. We have also, as a project team, carefully reviewed the information to determine the optimal location for the townhomes along the eastern edge of the site, and will utilize geopiers, as mentioned earlier, to better reinforce the soils below the buildings. There is a fair amount of fill internal to the site. The parking lot, which has 1 stall per bedroom, so 24 stalls in total, will utilize a permeable true grid system to accommodate a higher level of water infiltration and buffer against any soil settlement challenges. We do expect some amount of settlement, but we think this strategy will help tremendously. The project also respects the 40-foot forest corridor running along the highway, and we really have worked hard to ensure the project is well considered and something that will be a sensitive contribution to the Depoe Bay community.
All right, thank you. Is there anything else you wish to add?
I'm guessing there'll be some comments later, but I'm assuming we'll want to address those as they arise.
Sure. Are there any questions for the applicant and commissioners?
Do you know if the pond is going to be lined? The detention facility?
Yes, it will. And in the plans that were circulated, I believe there are 11 by 17 plans that Kit has passed along. You'll notice the pond along the southern edge of the property. We also have Farah's on the line here. He's the civil engineer for the project, who can answer any more detailed questions that might come up. We've also provided a perimeter fence around that pond, given the depth.
Can you speak to the fence that's part of the plan around the property?
Yes.
Appears to
we
be the
can't.
purpose to keep people out of Little Well Cove.
That is correct. In some of those community meetings that were referenced earlier, there was concern around the residents living in this location accessing some of the areas that might not be appropriate. And so it was discussed to put up a perimeter fence that would also respect any wetland areas. So in the plans that you should have on your table, we'll see a perimeter fence that kind of runs along the edge of the property line, and then goes around the fire pond, stays away from the wetland area, and then goes back to the property line along the other edges. And that is intended to appease any concerns with neighboring properties.
Okay, any more questions for the applicant?
I'll ask the question, but is this separate from Little Well Cove Homeowners Association?
I can answer.
Okay, we'll get into that later.
Okay. I think we'll get an answer to that later, is what I understand here. I do have a question. This is going to be relatively minor, but I'm looking at the 11 by 17 prints that we were provided. And is the landscaping plan finalized, or is it still a little ways out? I'm just looking at the conceptual rendering on the front page here.
The conceptual rendering is a conceptual rendering. I'd be careful to read too far into that portion of the document set, but it is, it's fairly well developed, but we certainly have, it'd be submitted with the building permit application.
Okay, my only request would be that there be no pompous grass there, please.
Yeah, okay. I'll take care of that one tonight. That's not a problem.
Thank you.
You bet.
Anybody else questions for the applicant? And we will be getting into additional testimony on both sides and rebuttal as well. So we may, if we have any questions that come and go, we can bounce them back and forth. All right.
Great.
Is there any further comments? Okay. Testimony from those in favor of the application.
Good evening. My name is Tom Kemper. I'm a co-developer with the project, with the Housing Authority. With respect to your question, it's odd. Oh, it is. Track B is not part of Little Well Cove. The developer kept the option of pulling it into Little Well Cove. His rights lapsed and they reverted to the HOA. So technically, the HOA has the right to bring in Track B, but right now it is specifically excluded from Track B. And in terms of we had a number of, we had two neighborhood meetings. One was the community room presentation, and we had a lot of people from Little Well Cove, obviously. They had a number of concerns. One was they didn't want a fire pit, and that was originally on our plan, so we pulled that from the plan. And then the second one was, we don't want, people coming on to Little Well Cove because they want to protect their beach access and the other amenities that they have. And so we agreed to put in a good fence to prevent that. And we've also, in that regard, they wanted us to sort of beef up the vegetation, as, the buffer between the sightline and we're gonna, particularly in the southwest corner of the property, you can faintly see the corner of the building. And so we're gonna, we'll put in additional vegetation to shield the view. Otherwise, you can't see the site from Little Well Cove. In terms of that geotech certificate, the issue that you raised, we're stuck with that requirement because Kit made sure that it's a condition that we get one, that we get the NV5 certificate, to get a certificate of occupancy. So we're aware of that, and we will get that. So, and then with respect to your comment about grass, we second that one. So, other questions that you have?
Do you know if any geotechnical mitigation measures are to be performed around the pond?
I am not sure of that. You would have to have, Jared, that would have to be a Jeremy response.
When you say geotechnical measures, what type of thing are you referring to?
Any type of measures to.
So it is a lined pond.
I mean, the lining is a protection measure. Is there any others besides lining?
Sure. In fairness, this also may be more in your scope than mine. If you want to take a first stab at it, I can follow up.
Again, the pond being graded in a cut situation, so you never want to put a pond in a filled situation. That's where you got failures, and then it's lined, so there's no seepage out there. And then, with the outlet structure and everything that we're going to be doing on site is going to be under the supervision of a geotechnical engineer. Any of the cuts, fills, compaction, we still going to have all the testing requirement that's required by a geotechnical engineer. Did I answer your question?
Yes, so I'm trying to hear you.
It was a little difficult to hear. Could you speak a little louder?
Get closer to the mic.
Yes, I'll try. Is this better?
That's better, thank you.
Okay. Again, the first thing to keep in mind, the pond is in a cut situation. It's never in a fill. Two, like Jeremy suggested, it's going to be lined, so there is no seepage of water. Three, any of the excavation, cut, fill, compaction, construction is going to be done under the supervision of one of our field engineers and supervision of the geotechnical engineer. So nothing will going to be done, alone by itself by the contractor. We will have supervised engineers on site during construction.
Thank you.
It's a great development. We really urge your approval.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Is there any other testimony in favor of the application?
Hi, my name is Gavin Butler. I'm the Asset and Development Manager for the Housing Authority in Lincoln County. I'm here to urge you to approve this. I'm here to urge you to approve this as a need for housing. As you all know, it's a desperate need around here. It is difficult to find housing. In particular, it's been very difficult for wildfire survivors. I've noticed, and they are our primary potential tenants. So on that basis, I just urge you to approve on the need for housing.
All right, thank you.
And one more thing, for the record, my name is Faris Kekia. I'm an engineer with Akana. We're providing the civil structure and the landscaping on the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, any other testimony in favor from anybody in the audience here or on Zoom? All right. Next up will be testimony in opposition, if anybody wishes to make any, and there will be a rebuttal period after that, if there is any. So anybody who wishes to testify in opposition to the application? Anybody on Zoom? Hearing none. No rebuttal, obviously. Anybody, is there anyone who requests that the record remain open for final additional written testimony? Okay, last call. All right, public hearing is now closed and commission will begin deliberations. To be completely honest, I've lived in Little Whale Cove for a little over 11 years, and I've driven by that site probably 4 million times or so, and I never realized it was part of Little Whale Cove. That's how much I know about the situation.
You don't live in the industry, do you?
What's that?
You don't live in the industry, do you?
No.
You're very aware of it.
Yeah, understood. That being said, that's been a vacant dirt lot for as long as I can remember driving by it. So I think, if something's going to happen there, I think this is as good as any, in my opinion.
I think at this point, we're just lucky it's only collected spare dirt, not appliances.
Yeah. And it sounds like the geotechnical concerns are the main kind of, it's a townhouse development, but the geotechnical stuff is the main concern as well, like high groundwater, I understand, but it looks like they got review with conditions from our city engineer and everything.
I think they've met all the requirements.
Yeah.
And with the supervision of the on-site geotechnical engineer, the only real concern, they're using piers for the building, but the only real concern is that body of water can slide and take the whole hill with it. But if the engineer's there, they'll mitigate that.
I do wonder, I've heard of on-site engineers. Like I said, I've worked construction for a long time, and I've seen on-site engineers once a month when they show up on a job site. Is that the case, or is there going to be somebody like monitored, like babysitting? I'm kind of curious. That's not a question for the applicant, but I do hope that, if that's what they're gonna do, I think that's great. Any other deliberations?
I don't know that it matters, but I'm still confused about if this is part of the local or not. And I'm a little,
That's
because
a
of
two-part
the
question.
issue with the fence.
Okay,
Let me say one more thing. When I was looking at property in Little Rock Cove, which has been a while ago, they did not allow fences to be built. You bought into, if I could not build a fence on the property. So then I'm a little confused, like, well, there's some verbiage that this is part of Little Rock Cove, some that it isn't. But it's being treated like it's not part of Little Rock Cove.
So there's a two-part question. There's the land, and it is part of the boundaries of the Little Well Cove Plan community. Politically, it is not part of the association. So in that regard,
Subject to CCNRs.
it's not subject to the CCNRs, it's not subject, it's non-Little Well Cove Homeowners Association. Apparently, we have the option of asking to do that later on, but that's not, there's a long sordid history with this tract of land going back 50 years. But right now, because it's a separate entity, legal entity, from Little Well Cove Association, they want to fence it. And it's most of the neighbors that live on the other side of it. there's two properties or three properties that abut that, or close to abut that. And it'd be very tempting for native residents to walk down that, through the woods down that road. So that was the reason for that. It's not considered part of the local homeowners association. So they're not subject to jurisdiction.
They won't be going to the meetings, they won't be using.
They won't have
public
votes, so they won't be
property.
paying dues on
They're not
any of that. Yeah, they're not part of the gated community.
They won't be having to pay dues.
Well, they can pay dues on it.
I can pay mine.
Big donations here and
Any other comments, commissioners? Well, I think my vote's gonna swing on the pampas grass, so let's hope that.
We got plenty of extra in little.
No, I know we do. I don't want more.
Like beautiful.
I won't argue with that. Yeah, it is a pretty.
It's a pretty plant, but we leave it alone at like English.
Yes.
It's pretty bad.
Okay, if there's no further deliberations, Chair will entertain a motion. Anybody cares to make one? All right, Chair will make a motion to approve the application as presented with the conditions described.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further or final discussion? Hearing none, Carla, would you please call the roll?
Henry,
Abstain?
Whitmire,
Aye.
Moreland. Aye. Sherman.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next item on the, that concludes that one. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business. Do we have any?
No.
No. Okay, next up then is new business. We've got case file number 2-C1-PC-24. Catch up here. This is no longer a public hearing, right?
Correct, this is a new business item.
Okay. All right, staff report, please.
Thank you. So the new business item before you this evening is a request to approve a change of use for the existing lower level of the Windmill Tap House building from a restaurant bar to retail. The site is located at 330 North Highway 101. As you may be aware, there's an existing two-story bar and restaurant and off-street parking lot on the site. The existing lower level bar area of the parlor building was approved through a building permit that was issued back in 2006. The proposed lower level lease area would measure 966 square feet, and there's no change to the upper level use that's proposed for this action, which has an existing serving area of 983 square feet. And based on the documentation provided by the applicant, there appears to be at least 14 off-street parking spaces provided in the parking lot. There is no change to the existing building setbacks or height as part of the proposed change of use. Both the restaurant, bar, and the general retail use that are proposed are uses that have been outright in C1 zone. Given that there is no increase in the footprint, volume, or height of the structure, the C1 zone design standards and guidelines are also not triggered by the change of use. With respect to the parking requirements for the proposed lower level retail use, one parking space is required for every 350 square feet of building area. For the existing upper level restaurant bar use, one parking space is required for every 100 square feet of serving area. This results in a total combined parking requirement with change of use of 13 spaces, which compares to about 14 spaces based on the current use, which is 13 spaces is obviously less than 14. As described in the staff report, the record and findings support the conclusion that the site is suitable for the change in use of the lower level from restaurant, bar to general retail. and that the change is consistent with applicable provisions of the zoning ordinance, and therefore the recommendation is to approve the requested change of use that or conditions that will memorialize the parking requirement for the change of use, and that will require the approval of a sign permit at such point as the retail tenant chooses to get a sign when they move into the lower level. That concludes the presentation, and the representative of Winmont here this evening. Is there any questions?
Are there any questions for Kit regarding the staff report?
So when there are shared parking, essentially a shared parking lot like this, which is not uncommon, right, in Depoe Bay. It meets the requirements for the number of parking spaces, but are they assigned, or like if the restaurant's full and they take up all the parking spots?
There's no proposal that's been put forward about assigning parking. It's really a private matter for a landlord to deal with it on their own and managing their own tenants. The numbers work out that basically the parking requirement is based on square footage, and it's not time sensitive. So it's not dependent on the hours that a business may be open. They assume 24 hours, 7-day-a-week operation at all times. You have to have a certain number of parking spaces. But what's been, it's not reflected in the application necessarily, but what's been explained to staff, conversations that we had prior to the application, is that the expectation is that the retail use would primarily be open during regular daylight hours, daytime hours, and that the restaurant use is primarily evening use. And so there shouldn't be, even though there are enough parking spaces to meet the demand for both uses simultaneously, the reality is that the retail use will more than likely not be open when the restaurant is in full swing. And so any parking that would otherwise be used by the retail space would be available for the restaurant to use as overflow. There's not expected to be any conflict between the uses just because of the nature of their hours of operation.
And those types of shared parking lots are typical in Depoe Bay.
It's not unusual, yeah. And I've worked in other jurisdictions where you had shared parking agreements that were much more complicated than this, where you had certain number of spaces during certain hours of the day, and they had to account for certain businesses being open and other ones being closed, because when you added all the numbers together, you didn't have the total. You might have been needing, if all the businesses were open 24 hours, you might need 50 parking spaces, but they were only providing, say, 35. So then you'd have to work the hours of operation so that at any given time you wouldn't have more than the same demand for 35 parking spaces. But that's not the case here. I mean, based on the city's parking requirements, the retail or restaurant used to be open 24 hours a day, and would have sufficient parking code for that to happen.
Any other questions for regarding the staff report from commissioners? Okay, would the applicant wish to present testimony?
Just briefly, make myself available for any questions to, my name is John Weidhart, representing. Things really changed during the pandemic on the retail side. And so there were some tough decisions that were made in this business. And we shrunk the footprint of the active restaurant bar situation and made it so that one person can work behind the bar and see the kitchen and also cook if necessary and be able to see the bar from inside the kitchen. So that's why we moved the bar upstairs. But that left the downstairs empty, of course, and things being what they are, any chance to get some income in this situation is something we're looking for. So retail, office, we're just looking for somebody that wants to do a little small business in there with not anything that's going to compete with the restaurant, and something that we've had people look at it, just are looking for sort of, like, a little thing to do in retirement, just to keep busy. So that's kind of like the tenant we're looking for. So anybody have any questions about what we're trying to do or why we're trying to do it?
We got questions for the applicant?
So you don't have a specific plan at this time?
We're just making it available, and, if we get the right tenant, they'll be coming to talk to you about what they want to do and give us time to do all of that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak on this application? Anybody on Zoom? Anybody wish to speak in opposition? I think that's probably about the gist of it. Okay, does the commission have any comments or deliberations to make?
It seems appropriate use for that area.
It was the bar downstairs before, right?
That's correct. We had the bar downstairs and the restaurant only upstairs.
Okay. No deliberation? Anybody care to move the application?
I move that we approve this application as presented.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? Well, sorry, Carla, please call a roll.
Whitmire.
Aye.
Moreland.
Aye.
Sherman.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Here you go.
Thank you. Thanks for your help, too.
Okay. Public comments.
Like
Nope.
public.
Is there anybody on Zoom that wishes to say anything for public comment period? Don't think so. Okay, liaison report. Jim, did you go to any meetings?
Did not.
Okay,
Do
neither did I.
we know what happened with the proposed ordinance change?
I have a note to myself about that to ask. Thank you for asking that. Was that the zone change regarding plan developments?
Yeah, it was,
Oh,
there was
city
city council
council thing?
required and it was the first reading, I guess. So, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, so when there's the zoning is changed, it requires, it has to be enacted by ordinance and it needs, and such an ordinance has to be presented twice. So the first reading, introduction, first reading, and second reading and
Is
adoption.
there a vote after the first reading? I've only seen second readings.
Yes, well, no, I mean, there was a motion to adopt or to introduce the ordinance.
Okay.
And then continue basically to a subsequent meeting, at which point the ordinance will come back for second reading and
Right,
adoption.
okay.
So there was, so that happened, so the first reading happened at the June 4th city council meeting. And again, this was for the rezoning associated with phase 2 of Well Watch. That the planning commission reviewed back in April, I think. So we did get comments from the Fair Housing Council of Oregon on the ordinance, and they had a concern or a desire to see some language incorporated into the ordinance, some binding language that talked about more specifically about housing need in the city, Goal 10, statewide planning Goal 10. So we're I'm going to be we're drafting some language to add another finding to the ordinance that will address that, and I think that will satisfy fair housing as far as they're concerned, or as far as they're concerned. And there also was discussion that was brought forth by Councilmember Rett as part of the discussion that evening about the possibility of some additional modifications to the actual the preliminary plan, planning commission had approved again back when you saw the pattern in April, so, we're waiting to get that. There was discussion at the meeting about some of the things that might be desired, might be proposed in terms of changes. I haven't received that specific language yet, so when I do, that will be presented as possible consideration with the next reading. I think depending on how extensive those changes are, it's likely that the ordinance will need to be reintroduced. This will be too different from what was initially presented, so there would be a subsequent introduction and another first reading and then a second reading again after that.
So the ordinance is gonna cover more than just changing the boundaries.
Yes, so the ordinance actually, it changes the zoning, it basically, it alters the boundaries of the zoning districts within the phase 2 area and it applies the planned district overlay within those zones. But it also adopts by reference the preliminary plan that the planning commission approved. So that becomes, the preliminary plan is basically exhibit B of that ordinance, exhibit A is the diagram, is the zoning diagram that shows where the lines.
So that allows them to request changes to the plan itself.
Yes, potentially. So again, depending on how extensive those might be, then there may need to be, rather than having a second reading next time it comes back, it may need to be a reintroduction and another first reading that would then come back for another second reading. So,
Do you have any idea what kind of changes they're gonna want?
well, I mean, there were a number of things that Councilor Rex was concerned about, landscaping, preservation of mature trees. The developer made a presentation in his comments to the council where he talked about their intent with the phase 2 homes, as you may recall, smaller, like 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 2-story homes that they're intending to offer as long-term rentals. The thought they would be workforce housing more affordable. And there seemed to be a desire that this council expressed in trying to somehow memorialize that, make it a condition or make it something that was enforceable. So, and the difficulty that potentially arises with that is that there's nothing in our zoning ordinance that defines any of those terms or establishes any type of program for what affordable housing is or means or who's qualified to occupy and who's not qualified. So it may be challenging to try to enforce conditions or changes to the preliminary plan that are backed up by something that's in the existing zoning ordinance. So those types of issues were some of the things that were kind of being thought about. So when I see and the council sees the scope of what might be proposed to change, then we'll just have to see what the next step is. So that's at the moment we're anticipating that the second reading would be at the first reading in July.
That's my only, it sounds like you don't know how those issues are really gonna be worked out. Is that
how
those issues are really gonna be worked out? It sounded, who works that out?
Well, I mean, it's these issues all need to be addressed somehow in the preliminary plan. The preliminary plan that the commission adopted sets out the standards for this phase. So if you may recall, it allowed deviations from lot sizes, it allowed deviations from setbacks and other standards for the homes that were being proposed and the street widths and other types of improvements, the stormwater retention pond and what have you. So, I mean, the commission has approved that, and that wasn't challenged. No appeal filed for that. So, I mean, to go, potentially what's being thought of now at the council level is essentially reopening what the commission did and reconsidering what the commission did. We don't know how extensive that might be at this point. The zoning boundaries are pretty set. I mean, the configuration of the lots is what it is, or the proposed configuration, although I suppose that.
What I'm wondering, are you gonna work that out with the applicant yet? Is it kind of between you and the applicant?
Well, it's not between me and anybody, I'm just the city planner.
Yeah. between the commission.
But I mean, ultimately, ultimately, the developer has to agree. I mean, we can impose, the council can, or the city can impose conditions and at some point, if they're unacceptable to the developer, they can exercise their right to due process to challenge that decision because of the council, if they don't agree with what the council approves. And I'm not saying we're going in that direction, but we're kind of in an area where it's kind of untested waters. And I just don't know. I don't know what, other than the conversations that we're having at the public meeting, I don't know how extensive the changes might be that would be suggested, and again, how that affects what the action, the planning commission is up to. And frankly, probably need to talk to the city attorney about it, which I think that.
Okay, that concludes the city council liaison report.
Watch my bill, huh?
I think none of us went.
We're only
Can't
required to be
really
there.
understand why, but you know.
You're only required to be there if you're asked to.
Yeah, only if I haven't been summoned, and I skipped my month without being
I
summoned.
mean, I run a lot of meetings, but the thing that gets me about council meetings and legislatures is you have to have a motion to follow the agenda. Every item has to be, okay, we're gonna accept this now, because it's the agenda, that's what the agenda's for.
Yeah.
Apparently not.
Actually, yeah, I skipped my liaison one, well, I didn't skip it, I wasn't summoned, I think a month or two ago, but, I do have July, and believe it or not, I do like going to city council meetings, and then I'm free for the summer, so I'm gonna attend my city council meetings, and I'll report back, especially if we hear anything further on that zone change.
Yeah.
Vote.
And the intent right now is for it to be on, I'm gonna reach out to council rep and just remind the council that they need to get to that language so we can put that together and get it back.
Okay, city planner and city recorder reports.
Lots of applications in May.
Looks like it.
Just, one of which, a couple of which were ones you heard tonight. The Derrick Street application came in May, the request from Lindaw came in May.
Question on that Derrick Street issue. I mean, the one neighbor to the west, there's a whole bunch of issues that have nothing to do with the application, it's all to do with city infrastructure. What do we do with that?
Share it with Public Works Department.
Yeah, okay.
It's,
And then maybe pay for it someday, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, issues about, the maintenance of the streets and the water pressure and all those are really Public Works.
Yeah, I think they need to,
Even street sign.
They need to talk to, Brady or the city council about.
I mean, and I know that, I was in the office today when Mr. Wick was speaking to Brady about the issue of the water service and Brady was talking to him about it, overhearing different pieces of it, talking about the city soon, at some point, coming in and doing some type of resurfacing on Davenport and Derrick and because I don't think there's been anything done to those streets for many years at this point. So, I mean, I think he gave me the impression, I think, to the applicant that there's something forthcoming, in terms of improving the appearance and functionality of that road. Ultimately, I know a lot of the issues that were raised by Mr. Gentleman on the corner of the Davenport address were really Public Works issues, water pressure, street condition.
I got a question on your log report here. The League of Oregon Cities thing that they had, the legislative update that they held last month, did you or somebody attend that? It says some.
I did. I was myself and Carl was there and
Anything?
City reporter.
Anything of note?
That there was some discussion about HB 1537, but there was mostly other legislative issues. I remember now we talked about the recreational immunity issue.
Oh, yeah.
Was discussed, and there were like 4 or 5 topics: recreational immunity, the housing bills, a couple of other things that were not necessarily land use related. But
So it's kind of a recap of the recent session.
Yeah.
Not a,
items that were priorities for the league, and they had, they were successful.
all right, cool. Okay, any other staff reports?
No.
Planning Commission concerns, you may want to go.
Yeah.
Ruth? No. Okay, I don't have any concerns except pampas grass.
That's the one thing I'm allergic to.
Yes. Oh, I had one of those allergy tests done, and I'm like anything cute and furry and any plant I'm allergic to. Awful, because I like them both. Okay, if there are no other issues to address, last call. Declare this meeting adjourned.